Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Terror Cellar. I'm Andy Crofts. It is lovely to be back and thank you so much for all the positive feedback we had from episode 1. As you know, this is all very new to me and it's lovely to be part of the old paranormal world and be part of something cool because I love all this stuff. So yeah, thank you very much. And remember, I want your ghost stories, okay? And I can't do it without you. I rely on your amazing tales from around the world. So please send them in. Send them to the Terror Cellar podcast at gmail.com. And it'll be great to read them out and feature them on the show, especially for you. So please send them over. But anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I think we should get on with our story. Here we go. This story has been sent in by Steve Box and it is called The Boy from the Woods. There's a wonderful walk just on the outskirts of Bristol, close to Barrow Gurney. If you turn off Barrow Street and drive up a quiet country lane toward the Church of St Mary and St Edward, you can park close to Barrow Court. Divided into private homes now, Barrow Court was once a Benedictine nunnery and was even used as a hospital during the Second World War. For me, even on a bright day, there's something a little odd about the place, especially the walled garden with the 12 busted head pillars placed along it representing the 12 months of the year. They stare inwards at the house, and it all feels a bit intimidating and mausoleum-like. So on the evening in late June, when my wife and I went for a walk there, they looked even more foreboding, gazing, stony-eyed and pupilless, into the fading summer night. We walked across the medieval deer park and looped around into the dense woods, and as the light continued to fade, the birds were in full voice. Lost in conversation, we walked along the ancient stone track, furrowed with the tracks from carts that must have been dragged up and down for decades in some long-forgotten toil. Then we heard a voice. A child's voice. A young boy, judging by the timbre of it. Echoing from somewhere within the dim canopies. "Help! Martin! Help me! I'm stuck!" Somehow, it instantly felt like we were in a movie. The voice was clear, like it had been overdubbed. The birds were silent, artfully mixed out for full effect. We were worried, of course. We wanted to help, but it was hard to tell from which way the cinematic call was coming from. We stood, pole-axed for a moment, then just up ahead of us a figure appeared. Not like an apparition at all, but just like any real, living being. The boy, wearing a red jacket, seemed to pop out onto the track. Although I can't remember seeing him emerge from between the trees, he was just suddenly there, not more than 20 metres ahead of us. We called to him, "Hello? Are you alright?" My wife moved forward, but he didn't answer. He didn't look at us either, so I can't describe his face. All I can say is that he looked to be about 6 or 7 years old, from his size that is, and then he ran away from us, heading on up the track. My wife went to run after him a bit, but not only might that have frightened him more, it was impossible to get anywhere near him. Just like when he came out of the woods, he was suddenly a great distance away. And then, within a minute, he had disappeared around the curve of the track. We stood bemused for a while. Was he okay? He obviously wasn't stuck anymore, and he wasn't calling for help. We slowly came to the opinion that he must be fine and he must know where he's going. Martin must surely be somewhere up ahead, so we walked on the same direction, pondering. It wasn't as if we'd been spooked by it at the time. We were more concerned for the welfare of the kid. But as we recounted the event, we began to realise that there was something decidedly unnatural about the whole episode. There were bits missing, not dissimilar to watching a silent movie where frames had been lost and the actors suddenly jumped to a new position, missing out the in-betweens. Except this one was in Technicolor. The red jacket was already haunting me, and what a cliche after thinking about the movie Don't Look Back. The sound was odd too. The sudden silence of the birds and the dubbed-on voice echoing through the twilight woods, not to mention the speed at which the boy ran away. The more we went over it, the more it struck me that it was like we had both tuned into an audio-visual frequency that was playing out some old event. An event that had absolutely nothing to do with us in a frequency we're not usually aware of. The track was long, and by the time we reached the open fields at the top, we felt relieved to be away from the brooding forest. But where had the boy gone? Being late in the day, there were no other walkers, and right up until we got back to our car, we saw no living soul. The final spooky button on the story is that we looked up the woods on some old OS maps when we got home. We wanted to see what caused the unusual lie of the land and that ancient track. What type of carts toiled along it? Turns out the area was an ancient quarry, and the woods, now much larger than they used to be, having reclaimed the dangerous pitted landscape, were called Martin's Woods. Thank you, Steve Box, for sending in that story. What a great story that is. And how do you even get that into your head? All on his own and just disappearing down the road like super fast, and it's just all a bit freaky, isn't it? All I would say is, if you see a little thing in a red jacket, leg it. This next story has been sent in by Andrew Dexter and is called The Ghost of Gladstone Villa. Welcome to a tale of mysterious and unexplained. A story that has haunted my family for decades, centering around a place that still sends chills down our spine, Gladstone Villa. This was no ordinary home. Standing tall on Cardiff Road in the once bustling mining town of Bargoed, South Wales, Gladstone Villa loomed over the town like a dark sentinel, a massive 3-storey building with a history of its own. Bargoed might seem unassuming, but it hides secrets. Nestled 17 miles from Cardiff and 8 miles north of Caerphilly, this little town became the stage for something more sinister than anyone could ever have imagined. In the 1960s, my parents, Caroline and Douglas Dexter, met at the bakehouse on Baldwin Street. Their love blossomed, and in April 1969 they tied the knot at the Cardiff Registry Office. But unlike most newlyweds, they didn't move into their own place. Instead, they made their home in Gladstone Villa with my maternal grandparents, Bill and Rita Higgs. Nothing strange happened at first, until after I was born, also in 1969. That's when the house began to change. Mum would later tell me it started in the attic. A sound like someone jumping, landing with a heavy thud on the landing below. Convinced someone was breaking in, my family rushed upstairs, but no one was there. Only the attic hatch ominously swung open. From that moment, the activity became relentless, as if something had awakened inside the house. The strange noises were soon joined by heavy, deliberate footsteps that echoed through the halls, particularly in the master bedroom where my grandparents slept. Every night we would hear it, even during the day sometimes. We'd turn the TV down just to listen. The slow and deliberate pacing, like someone or something was walking just above us. And then it got personal. One day, they found the pillow in my crib torn in half. Fortunately, I wasn't in it at the time, but that was only the beginning. Local curate Graham Jones from St. Glaradis Church was called in to bless the house. After a few quick prayers, he warned, "Watch the baby." For a time, things quietened down. But as with all good horror stories, the peace didn't last. The footsteps returned, joined by minor poltergeist activity, objects moving on their own, and unexplained sounds. I was still young, but I soon witnessed it with my own eyes. I remember watching as brown coaxial cables yanked from the back of the television, as if by invisible hands. No damage was done, but the message was clear: something was there. The most terrifying encounter happened to my mother. One evening, she saw a figure, a solid, unmistakable form standing behind the sofa. A monk. He wore a brown habit, the hood pulled up so his face was hidden. He stood there silently watching as my grandmother sat nearby, obviously reading a book. My mother was the only one who saw it. Soon, things escalated to the point where my mother, grandmother, and I resorted to sleeping downstairs with the lights on, too terrified to stay in the bedrooms. Even the most hardened skeptic, Ivy France, who laughed off our tales of the haunting, was forced to confront the truth. She initially dismissed it all as traffic vibrations, but had a change of heart after she experienced the phenomena firsthand. She even contacted a medium, John Matthews, in desperation. Matthews arrived, asked questions, and then challenged the spirit directly. And it answered. A loud knock, almost a warning, came from above. Matthews went into a trance, attempting to communicate with the entity, but he couldn't get a name. He confirmed what we all feared. It was an earthbound spirit trapped with unfinished business. Before leaving, he scattered flour across the master bedroom floor and sealed the room. When we returned the next day, there were footprints in the flour. Clear impressions of something walking through that sealed room. In June 1978, we had finally had enough. We left Gladstone Villa behind, moving on from the nightmare that had become our reality. But the house didn't stay quiet for long. The McBurney family took over, converting it into Red's Park Hotel, and soon the staff began to report strange happenings, particularly in room 5. One employee even claimed to have seen a bride dressed in white, which puzzled me until I began digging into the villa's past. The town's history revealed some chilling connections. There had once been a monastery nearby dating back over 400 years, and according to my grandfather, a man had murdered his wife in the property, which might explain the bride. Then there was the baby's cry my mother and grandfather once heard, a sound they couldn't place at the time, It wasn't until I researched further that I found a record of the baby who had died there in 1924. A little boy named Elvin Kimiet, only 4 months old. He's buried in Bedweltry Cemetery. Gladstone Villa wasn't just a house. It was the centre of something dark, something that scarred my family. My father Douglas never fully recovered from his time there. He suffered breakdowns, haunted by memories of what we experienced, and tragically, he passed away in 1991 at just 44 years old. This was real, a genuine, horrifying encounter that left its mark on all of us. Thank you, Andrew, for sending in that story, and I'm sorry to hear that your father died so young at 44. I mean, did that paranormal activity contribute towards his early death? Do you know what I mean? Was the pressure on his mind and body from the poltergeist activities and the surrealness of it all, did that contribute towards it? Probably. I mean, it's hard for me to say just reading out the story, but by the sounds of it, it tormented all of you, and you said your father never got over it, and he suffered breakdowns, haunted by all the memories from that house. So, yeah, that's strange that something so dark could hang over your family like that. Thank you everyone for tuning in to episode 2 of The Terror Cellar. And remember, I need your stories. Ghost stories or any kind of spooky, strange stories at all. Just send them over to the Terror Cellar podcast at gmail.com. And I, Andy Crofts, will read them out, especially on the show for you. So please send them over. And also, I would be so grateful if you could follow my podcast, leave a review, and whatever platform you're listening on, please do this, the relevant thing, because it will help my podcast grow. And, it's only early days. I'm on episode 2. I can't expect wonders yet, but things like that will help it go much further. So please stick with me and give me a like and a subscribe and all of that. And I will see you all for episode 3. Don't have nightmares. Bye-bye.